Mark Rogers TV in partnership with SEC Breakdown, looking at positional units across the conference. We stop in Florida with David Waters to check out the Gators. Please join us on Twitter, on Facebook at SEC Breakdown. David, myself, Chad Niepling, and Mike Laval. All right, David, let's look at the tight end position for Florida, because we get caught up in the more dynamic playmakers, the guys that make the freakish kind of catches and plays down the field. But a good tight end can be a quarterback's best friend. And Florida bailed out many times last season by Jake McGee with 41 catches, 4 touchdowns, very dependable, and a little less proven are the guys coming back this season.
Right. And I think coming out of spring ball, I think we saw both tight ends, DeAndre Goolsby, who's probably the leader coming out of spring, and Keontae Lewis, both really make plays that we saw flashes of last year, and they also made them in the spring game. So I think when Jim McElwain's offense is the way he wants it and the way it's humming, he's going to use these tight ends a pretty good bit. Goolsby and Lewis both have excellent hands. They can catch the ball pretty good. But also, more importantly, when they do catch the ball, is making something happen after the catch. They've both excelled in that, especially DeAndre Goolsby. Kind of reminds me when Florida had Trey Burton in kind of a similar role when they would line him up at tight end just a little bit, who can catch the ball and definitely make a big play happen. They're not afraid to get dirty. They'll run over you as well. They won't be asked to run block a good bit. That will be more on the offensive line. But they must get better in that. But, as far as their main role and what they're going to be asked to do is going to be to catch the ball and make something happen after the catch.
Goolsby caught 17 last year, 277 yards. It's just a freshman with a 1 touchdown. So you're thinking that it's not necessarily important who wins this job, that they're both going to basically see the field quite a bit?
Right. Toward the beginning of the season last year, when Florida was splitting times between Will Grier and Treon Harris, they were also splitting, catches between the 3 tight ends when McGee was there. So it was McGee, Goolsby, and Lewis all making plays against overmatched opponents. So I don't know if that was part of it, getting their feet wet. Florida knew what they had in Jake McGee. But like I said, when Goolsby and Lewis was on the field, the production really didn't fall off, and they all really made plays after the catch. So going in, they're very athletic. They have big play potential, but they're going to be open on a routine basis in Jim McElwain's offense. It's going to be up to Luke Del Rio to find them and help the offense out.
Much of the offensive playmakers back from 2015, tight end included, minus Jake McGee, but a new quarterback in place for the Florida Gators, and the tight end will be utilized. David Waters, myself, Mark Rogers on SEC Breakdown. Join us on Twitter. Join us on Facebook there. We've got plenty of content to provide you as we look forward to 2016. All right, David. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Cool.
Sweet.
Wasn't a whole lot there.
No, I
nice
knew.
And tight.
I knew there wasn't going to be.
That was good. All right, so just help me out here in terms of ends and tackles. So Bullard's gone.
Bullard's gone. Yep.
Cox is back.
Bullard and Alex McAllister gone. So that's your 2 main guys on the line.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You have Brian Cox Jr. back, CeCe Jefferson, who was going to line up at tackle and in, depending on situation. As far as
Caleb Brantley.
Yep, Caleb Brantley at tackle. So, we all had him in our top 5 listing when we talked last week.
Yeah.
And I'll just go to some other names at end, but it'll be mainly Cox and Jefferson there. I think
who are going to be the tackles?
Yeah, tackle. If they go 3 down, you'll see Jefferson or Brantley there, mainly Brantley. Joey Ivy will, he's developed. He'll be there a good bit. He'll be some relief, some good relief. The guy that'll get in the summer of the recruit, if we want to really go that deep, Ja'Kai Polite. So.
Yeah, I saw him listed. How about Jordan Smith?
No.
Yeah,
I don't think we'll hear much from him.
No? Based on the list I saw, he was higher in the recruiting rankings than Polite. Okay.
Put it this way. In the end, I think they'll both end up redshirting, so I don't really think it'll matter.
Okay. Whoever you don't mention, I'll just mention them at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Do you just want me to throw you ends and you can go to work, and I'll throw you tackles and you can go to work, and then anything you don't mention that I got here in regards to facts or stats, I'll fill in.
Okay.
Joey Ivy, okay. Bullard gone, McAllister gone. All right. All right.
All right.
Here we go. All right, we all watched the games. There's no question. Florida won the SEC Eastern Division on defense, and that defense started up front with guys like Jonathan Bullard and Alex McAllister. They're gone this season. Florida looking to be just as strong up front and make another push toward a division title. Thanks for joining us on SEC Breakdown. And we're joined, of course, by David Waters. Please join us on Twitter and on Facebook as we break down positions across the conference. So let's talk about the way these tackle and end positions line up, David, with Jonathan Bullard gone, 18 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks last year, and McAllister almost as effective with 9.5 tackles for loss and 6.5 sacks. So big losses there. What do you have coming back? Let's start at D tackle.
Defensive tackle, I tell you, you're going to go first and stop there. I mean, Caleb Brantley is going to be the main stopgap guy who, coaches just going to love. And believe it or not, sometimes, we saw in the spring where now CeCe Jefferson can also be moved inside when Florida needs to, obvious running downs. You'll probably see Brantley and Jefferson both in there. But yeah, Caleb Brantley is going to be the go-to, through in a 3-down lineman. He's going to be right in the middle. He's a known commodity, but there's several capable players, especially with CeCe Jefferson going in there too. Joey Ivy, who's really developed, he's definitely dependable. If Brantley has to go out, he can come in and step right up. Brantley, but he's going to be the guy who gives opposing offensive lines a big headache. He's rare for talent and that size and a quick burst off the ball, but it's just going to be, his stats don't necessarily, line up. He really came on second half of the year, so I think that's the production Florida's definitely going to look at. But with Jonathan Bullard gone, Caleb Brantley is going to be the guy who needs to step up and feel at least close to that role. But I really think CeCe Jefferson as well. If they move him from end to tackle, we don't know what scenarios. Like I said, mainly probably running downs when they know the opposing offense is going to go run heavy. But it'd be interesting to see when CeCe Jefferson moves inside and how much he's actually in there.
Yeah, the most meaningless stats for football players probably most of the time are a lockdown corner that don't see the football very much and probably don't pick off too many passes, and defensive tackles who are tying up blockers, maybe not necessarily making the play, the tackle themselves, but impacting the game and pushing the run game into the backfield and doing a lot of things that don't fill up a stat sheet. That said, Caleb Brantley, 7 tackles for loss and 3 sacks for a defensive tackle, pretty substantial, and as you said, much more productive down the stretch for the Gators. Brian Cox, of course, one of the more productive ends in the league with 11 tackles for loss and 6.5 sacks. Your thoughts about the end position?
Right, Brian Cox, and I have to mention CeCe Jefferson since we don't necessarily know, but that's going to be your main 2 ends. CeCe was limited to spring when we went there, when we saw spring, so we saw definitely more of Cox, bowling down opposing offensive tackles. David Sharp, you definitely had some problems handling them. But the young guy I really like, he was a recruit from last year. They redshirted. He got a big mean streak. Jabari Zuniga out of Atlanta. This guy I really think is going to be one of Florida's next stars that a lot of people are really not talking about. He's got, big time size, big time speed, and like I said, that mean streak. I think you're looking for it in SEC defensive ends. But this is throw in Kevonis Davis as well, and this should be a unit that you can really see 4 or 5 deep. I think they'll be able to stay fresh. We've seen the Florida defense not necessarily have to stay on the field a long time because of their own doing. It's because they're on the field a lot because the offense is not doing a lot. So with a little bit of help from the offense, and if this defense can keep up what they've been doing. I don't think the end position. Yes, McAllister was very good, but he was suspended a good bit the second half of the season. So Florida was used to playing without him. So they C.C. Jefferson and Brian Cox Jr. and Cox Jr. has made some big plays in his career. So I think the experience is definitely there. The pass rushing ability is not really going to drop off. These guys we saw them going against the first team offensive line a good bit and dominated all spring. So it's, that might speak to how bad the offensive line is, but hopefully for Florida, it speaks to how good the defensive line is.
David, we mentioned stats being misleading. Two of the more misleading defensive stats I saw last year, Dalvin Cook ran for 180 some yards in that game, that whatever it was, 27-2 game. He had like 35 yards entering the fourth quarter when the game really mattered, when it was close, and then the defense was just on the field too much and the game got out of hand. But he had like 35 yards entering the fourth quarter. Derrick Henry, 45 carries. He didn't have a rush longer than I think 6 or 7 yards against this Florida defense until late in the game when it was a 2-score game. Again, he ripped off like a 35 or 40 yarder. They kept two of the best backs in college football down to basically nothing. Are there hopes, despite these losses, that this front seven, which I thought was one of the top 5 in college football, can be nearly as good?
They are deep at defensive line. I think the issue will come from that. Maybe it's because they don't have a lot of depth at linebacker. So as long as they stay healthy at linebacker, I think those stats can improve. You mentioned just two of the best backs, and when they also played Leonard Fournette and LSU, he ate him up a lot in the first half, and then Florida shut him down in the second half. So, more like you said, these big-time running backs that Florida faced, it's not like Florida got ran over all game against these guys. Fournette would probably be more impressive because he did it earlier in the game when the defense wasn't worn out, like you said. But Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, and basically back-to-back weeks as well when they played those guys, Florida really held their own until, like you said, they got worn out. So they got the names there. C.C. Jefferson, Jordan Sherritt, Ian Cavanis Davis, and now newcomers Antonius Clayton, who I think if he can bulk up, he can also see the field at some time. But they are pretty deep, so I think the front seven, especially the defensive line, one of the deepest units on the team. I think they can keep up. Those rushing statistics against the big backs.
All right, a couple names you may see in the future: Jordan Smith and Ja'Kai Polite. Both rated in the top 30 to 35 defensive ends this last recruiting class. Smith out of Georgia and Polite out of Daytona. May redshirt, most likely, coming up here in 2016. Breaking down the defensive front for Florida, David Waters and myself. You got to check us out on SEC Breakdown. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for tons of SEC content. All right, Dave, thanks for the breakdown.
Thanks, Mark.
Cool. Very good.